Hey guys, and welcome back to the Geekbox. And after doing our top 10 PlayStation 1 and 2 list, well, it got me thinking about other consoles that I played in the past, which drew me to my favourite console of all time. So today, join us as we count down the top 10 games of the N64, the Nintendo classic that really blew into the market way back in the 90s when I was, well, still a kid. And as always, let me know in the comments below what your favourite games were on the N64 and what you think of the list. Obviously, is there any other list that you'd like to see as well? You can drop that in the comments below as well, and I'll get that sorted as soon as possible. Well, that's enough of me talking for now. Let's get into it. Conker's Bad Fur Day. Well, what do you get if you take what's supposed to be a cute and cuddly squirrel and instead fill him with a load of bad attitudes, loads of bad pop culture references, loads of bad pop culture film references, and a whole load of attitude, guns, and just foul play? Well, you get Conkers. In Conker's Bad Fur Day, we join him for his adventure across a whole load of colourful lands. But instead of playing the usual light-hearted family genre game, we just got constant bad language, beer, drugs, we even got a sunflower with a giant pair of boobs, and we got a toilet, well, boss, where you had to flush a giant turd down by beating him with toilet rolls. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about Conkers, all you need to know as well is there's a light storyline to follow for the entire thing, just rising up to Conker's power. But it's just one bad joke after another, and it worked absolutely perfectly. So for those that got tired of these kid-friendly bouncing around happy-go-lucky games, Conker's Bad Fur Day filled the gap perfectly and made his name on the N64. Pokemon Snap. Well, it's Nintendo. There had to be something Pokemon somewhere in there. And whereas Pokemon Stadium was a great game in itself, Pokemon Snap gave us something that was different but highly enjoyable. Travelling around a safari course doing open different levels, you got to travel along and take photographs of all different Pokemon in their environments, but you got to manipulate the environment yourself, whether it be by throwing rocks or apples or just waiting for that right moment. You got to make sure that you got the best snaps every time when you hit the click of the camera. And because of the different avenues you could do, you always found yourself going back and playing the levels over and over again, and it built up a proper culture around this game of people comparing what snaps they got and what they'd actually managed to find so far. And back when it came out for me, it was a proper schoolyard talk topic, and it was a game that cemented itself as something different off a classic genre that nailed itself down in Nintendo franchises. Banjo-Kazooie. Well, we jumped into an adventure here with this bear and this bird with an attitude, and we got a Nintendo absolute masterpiece. Bought from one of the Grand Masters of the era, Rareware, which unfortunately did die after Nintendo years, but here in their prime they gave us this absolute colourful adventure that took us across an entire world as we tried to save Banjo's sister from the evil witch Gotilda. Well, we found so many different things in this game that are memorable, chasing down the little musical jiggies, the weird speech that every character had, and of course finding your way in a whole different host of adventures, from fighting in a sandcastle to a submarine to a jungle. Banjo-Kazooie offered us all sorts of adventures on the N64. As both a kids game with a few hidden adult jokes in there as well, this was a game that spanned across an entire family network for people to enjoy, and well, for me it's definitely one of the most memorable games I've ever played. And after that, Banjo-Kazooie also got a sequel, but I had to pick the original as Banjo-Tooie couldn't quite nail down those mechanics that made the first game just so amazing for itself. But in between all the cheap humour, you had a great adventure game with so many good things to do in it, from puzzles to straight up fighting, to just navigating your way around all different things and challenges that you had to set. This game was a game that people found themselves coming back to time and time again, and that's why Banjo-Kazooie has to be one of the master games that survived from the N64 era, and has been put in a good handful of remake sets and other games collections that come from this time. Star Wars Rogue Squadron. Well, this game put you in the pilot seat of a whole host of different ships from Star Wars, taking place between episode 4 and 5, It filled in that little bit of story and put you in the cockpit as you got to fly everything from an X-Wing, an R-Wing, all the way through to the Millennium Falcon. Starting off travelling from Tatooine and travelling right the way through until you were fighting on the Death Star itself. Star Wars fans finally got their fill of what it was like to fly these ships properly, and they took full advantage of the N64 and really let you get stuck into the adventure, whether it be from a bombing run with a Y-Wing or just shooting your way through a dogfight. Star Wars Rogue Squadron gave everybody their fix of the Star Wars universe that they had to offer in this generation. Star Fox 64. Well, this is a step up from the SNES game Star Fox, which was innovative in itself, but they really took it to a new level here on the N64, and well, it was actually the first game on the N64 as well that used proper voice capture all the way through the game. That's why still to this day Star Fox 64 has got so many noticeable and recorded lines that people always remember from their childhood, or even just from seeing videos of the game, etc. And you ever hear a reference to somebody shouting out, "Do a barrel roll!" This is where that began. As a deep game that let you play in a whole host of levels and to shoot your way through and enjoy the characters right away until you reach the master face, Star Fox 64 put itself in a legacy of its own on the N64. Super Mario 64. Well, you're going to get a little Mario section here because it's Nintendo. Mario pretty much is the face of Nintendo with no questions asked. And Super Mario 64 is one of the launching games for the console, truly cemented what the N64 was all going to be about for people. Entering a massive 3D world and getting to enjoy the classic adventures of Mario chasing down and saving the princess. You got to visit a whole host of worlds and visit some new characters and a lot of old characters in a fully 3D rendered environment, but it's still a game that stood the test of time that people are still trying to beat challenges on now, and Super Mario 64 put its foot in as one of the best games that Nintendo ever offered. Mario Party 2. Hey, I said there was going to be more Mario. So, Mario Party 2, well, the first Mario Party game was a great game for everyone to play, but Mario Party 2 just improved everything in every single way. And it would plug in 4 controllers, or even just an extra controller and go one-on-one with your friends. Mario Party offered hours and hours of gameplay of all different types of little mini games you could play. And, well, there's probably just as many arguments as there was laughter in between with it. But Mario Party was a game that brought people together and really let them just take advantage of what the N64 could do. So Party was in the name and Party was definitely the game, and it was one of those games that definitely stood out as the top games available on the N64. But there's only a few games that could ever top it off, and Mario definitely clipped one of those as well, which leads us on to of course, Mario Kart 64, which has already lent on its legacy to Mario Kart 8, which has just come out on the Switch, and, well, Mario Kart 64 for a lot of players is where the obsession would begin. I can remember many times whacking 4 controllers into the N64 and really just getting in, launching shells and launching rockets around and just blowing everything away on Mario Kart. This was a game that you could play for hours and hours and hours with your friends, or just challenge yourself by yourself. And it came down as a cult classic game for people to get stuck into, and most people that played on the N64 will have great memories of the times they failed, or they actually succeeded on Mario Kart 64, as long as we don't talk about damn Rainbow Road. GoldenEye 64. Now, to me, GoldenEye 64, the original, is one of the best games of all time. That's why it's so high on this list. And the fun fact is with it, the thing that made GoldenEye 64 so memorable to a lot of people was its multiplayer. It was the first person shooter multiplayer that you could sit down, get on with your friends on a split screen and really go to town on each other. Well, as long as nobody picked Oddjob and just pissed everybody else off, you could have a really good laugh with it. But it cemented itself as an absolute cult classic legend game, and it still stands the test of time now. And considering the multiplayer function was actually a last thought that they put in at the very last moment of the game originally was based off its single player campaign. Now obviously GoldenEye has a soft spot for me, as it's the first game I ever had on the N64, and it came with the one that I got, that my dad got me for Christmas. And a single player campaign obviously is based on the story of the film of the same name, and it just had so many things to it. It was smooth, it had a whole range of guns, the objectives, the whole thing flowed, and it allowed you to just play all the way through, or keep going back to try and beat different things on that same level, split between your different levels as well, of agent, secret agent or 00 agent. It allows you to come back time and time again, and even now there are still people competing for the speed records for GoldenEye 64, so this game's legacy will always speak for itself. Ah yes, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. What else could I have picked for number one? The game that revolutionised this style of game. Many Zelda games have come before that were great, but when it stepped onto the N64, it didn't just improve on what had been done before, it blew everything out of the water. You tell the rich story of you, Link, trying to save Hyrule. You have the Ocarina of Time, so you can travel between the two time zones, and you have to save the princess and the whole of Hyrule as well from the evil of Ganondorf. Well, if there was a way they could improve a game, Ocarina of Time did it. You want better puzzles? Done. You wanted great dungeons to explore? Done. You wanted open scapes to visit around and have to try and find all the different things involved in it? Done. You want to ride around just on a horseback and enjoy the scenery? Done. They just did everything in the Ocarina of Time, and that's why for me it's, well, my favourite game of all time. There's so many games that I love, but this is the number one that always stayed in my heart, and so much so that it actually made its way onto the 3DS in a full remake, and it sold massively there as well. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was a game that revolutionised gaming for its genre and had influence on so many other things around it. And there's been many great games that have come out, and I can only think of Breath of the Wild being the one for me that come close to this one. But Ocarina of Time will always be the one that gets in the number one spot. Well, that's my list anyway for my top 10 N64 games. Obviously, let me know what you think of the list as always, and if you agree or disagree, what would you have in the list instead? Well, I look forward to hearing from you guys. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date on all the latest content. And if you like this video, please feel free to hit the like button as well. All your support and love is always appreciated. But that's everything from me for today. As always, I'll see you out there.